controversial opinion time. We're going to talk about electric cars today, and we're going to talk about why you shouldn't buy an electric car, and why exactly electrical cars are a lot more complex than we originally thought, or that we are led to believe. So electric cars are, everyone knows what an electric car is. Everyone's seen a Tesla, or the Porsches that they have, and other manufacturers are bringing out electrical cars left, right and centre. We are led to believe that these are very good for the environment, and they're going to solve all these problems. But there's a lot more to it than that. And today we're going to talk about why you shouldn't buy an electric car, and we're also going to touch base on why you may want to buy an electric car. And there are benefits to it, but they're not environmental benefits. So in terms of the environment, developing and building electric cars is far more environmentally complex than we are led to believe. The full life cycle of an electrical car has a bigger environmental impact than what many people actually talk about. For example, 50 times the weight of the battery has to come out of the ground in order to produce the battery. And we're talking about digging up precious metals, cobalt and that sort of stuff. Continuing on the battery, so you've taken 50 times the weight of the battery out of the ground to make one battery. Then after a little while, guess what? Less than 10 years later, the battery gets decommissioned, because the batteries are consumables. And the technology behind how these batteries can last a long time, like for example, batteries that are also not very environmentally friendly in Priuses and Toyota's hybrids. Those, although that they are terrible for the environment, and you're shipping all of these materials with 50 times the weight here, there and everywhere across the oceans, and from here to there to there to here to then be assembled in some place. Building a Prius is terrible for the environment. It's just very economical in town because you're using the electric engine. But with the batteries of the Prius, they actually last more than 10 years. They actually last like hundreds of thousands, 200,000 miles. And then the car can still be driven without the battery. And also, which will lead me on to another point, is that the cost of those batteries in Toyotas are about less than maybe a tenth or 20th of the cost. I would say between a 20th and perhaps a fifth of the cost, depending on where you go and what model it is and such. But the thing is that when the battery gets decommissioned, the impact on the environment is of course very bad. And that if you want to replace a battery on a Tesla, it's going to set you back 20 grand. Do you know how many Honda Civics, second-hand Honda Civics you can buy? You can buy at least 10 good Honda Civics, not ship boxes, good Honda Civics that will last, that will outlive you. These cars will outlive you and me. These cars are built to last. Hondas are known for being built to last. They're known for, you drain the oil out of them, you run them, and they last months. So the battery is a really bad thing for the environment. Then we'll come on to the extra particulates coming off the tyres because of the weight, the extra weight, and what's the impact of that in the environment? What's the impact of that in your air quality? So that's in terms of environment. Let's also consider the cost. The cost of buying an electric car. I think most people will agree with me when you say that, look, the cost of buying an electric car is far higher than the cost of buying a diesel or petrol car. And if you want to say, okay, it's cheaper to fill it up and this and that, but what's the payback period realistically? Okay, in the UK there's no road tax on it. For now, they will have it soon enough. But say you had no road tax, okay, so you're saving £300 a year on that. Say you normally spend £100 a month on petrol, £1,200 a year. And say now, somehow you can just fill it up for free, so you're saving £1,500 a year. But if that car is 10 grand more, or 15 grand more to make the maths easy, then the payback period is 10 years. By the time 10 years has come up, your battery needs to be changed and you've got to spend 20k. It doesn't make sense. Financially, it does not make sense. You're spending more on the car in the initial purchase in the hope that you're going to have some sort of payback period. Essentially, what you're hoping is that over a certain amount of years, the capital outlay that you put initially is saved, right? It's just like light bulbs, you know, instead of paying, I don't know, you know, you get an energy efficient light bulb and it will tell you, you know, the payback period is, you know, it's usually not that long, a couple of months or a year or something, or a couple of years. But with this, you're talking a decade or more or less. But once you consider the fact of well, also servicing these vehicles, because you can't just go and service that yourself, or you can't just go to matey down the road and he'll give you a quick service for 100 quid and just change your oil and whatnot. God knows what they have to do with these electric cars to service them. Do they even require servicing? I don't know what happens in that instance, but I can tell you what, if they do require servicing, it's going to cost you more. Definitely, it's going to cost you more. Also, if we look at the labour workforce involved in this, there's hundreds of thousands of mechanics. People are even like mobile mechanics, self-trained, self-taught and stuff. Basically, I'm basically like a self-taught mechanic. So I can fix stuff, I can change the oil, I can, you know, I'm going to be changing a starter motor soon, I'm changing a drive shaft, you know, I've done quite a lot in terms of cars, changing loads of parts and stuff. I'm not qualified or anything, but you know, you learn how to do it yourself, and that. But with electric cars, you can't exactly do that because there's the danger of dying from the electricity. And what I'm getting at here is that there's a lot more mechanics for normal cars, petrol and diesel cars, than there are for electrical cars. And guess what happens when you have less supply and more demand? The price goes up, which means the price per hour of these electrical engineers, these electrical technicians, is going to be more than a normal mechanic. Also, let's go back to the environment. If you still thought that, oh, you know what, I'll pay the extra cost because of the environment, where do you think the electricity is coming from? It's not coming from fart power or anything like that. 60% of the fuel in the UK comes from fossil fuels. So basically, that crude oil that's then converted into petrol or diesel, instead of burning it when it gets to your car, you're just burning it earlier in the line so you can't see it. And then you pretend it doesn't exist. Because I can't see it, it doesn't exist. They're burning it over there, but because it's not right next to me, it doesn't exist. And that's stupid. Really, the idea of an electric car, look, we do need to do something about the environment. But electric cars are not the solution. The solution is figuring out how to basically live without having to burn fossil fuels. And that's everything. Getting electricity without fossil fuels, or maybe finding some other form of power. Yeah, there's a lot of untouched stuff out there. Could you imagine if we could power everything, not with electricity, but with something else? It's possible. The infrastructure and range just still isn't there for cars, for these electric cars. I mean, you're going to get like 200 miles out of it. That's not enough for me. I'm doing trips that 150 miles, you know, 200 miles each way. And then when you're going on the motorway, you're lucky if you could probably get 100 out of it. You know, the build quality. Oh my God, the build quality of Teslas is terrible. I'm calling Tesla out here. The build quality of Teslas is absolutely shocking. Brand new cars, 80 grand, 100 grand cars, and they've got, you know, the panels are misaligned. There was one case with the Model 3s where the boots, by design, or by the way that they've basically put it together, is not very good. So what happens is that when you open the boot, it scratches the paintwork. You know, you run your finger over the line of a Tesla, the panel gap of a Tesla, and it's disgusting. You run your finger along the line of a Honda, and it's perfect. Or a Lexus, it's perfect. Or even a Peugeot or a Ford or something is better. You know, a Ford is definitely built better than a Tesla, 100%. Or you know, I don't know if it's a push to say Volkswagen is built better than Teslas. I mean, people could get build quality confused with quality of materials. So Just because you're putting leather and you've got a heavy door doesn't mean that the build quality is good. What we're talking about here is that when you touch stuff and, you know, does it break, basically? After 10 years, will it break? And in my 24-year-old Honda, no, nothing's broken. The indicator feels absolutely solid. Every single button feels absolutely solid. There's no problem there, no panel gaps. No problem with panel gaps. You know, everything is absolutely solid. You hit the dash, you feel it. You shut the door, you can feel that that car is a solid car. Teslas, you don't have that. You sit in it, you can move the bits above the screen. I've sat in it. I've been in the cars. I've looked at them time and time again. And I've had, you know, I've also spoken to people that fix Teslas. And they tell me the same thing. They're built like shit. They're just built like shit. Now, Tesla has done amazing things. I don't want to shit on them too much because they have done amazing things, and they have, like, you have to hand it to old musky boy Elon Musk. You have to hand it to him. He has done some amazing things. Unfortunately, you know, the build quality of Teslas just isn't there. The build quality of you know, an electric Porsche is probably going to be way better. I haven't seen it personally, but I could imagine, because it's an older company, the build quality is going to be pretty decent. I mean, overall, really, if you look at the whole life cycle of an electric car, excluding where the power comes from, just the life cycle of it, I don't think the environmental benefits are there. The logic most people use is completely flawed. The only benefit is tax benefits, and I'll explain that in a minute. Environmentally, electric cars are probably worse because you have to dig out 50 times the amount to get the battery. Then the battery goes after 10 years, then you spend 20k getting the battery. Then it costs more to buy the car. And in fact, now, because the price of electricity in the UK has tripled, it costs us pretty much the same to fill up an electric car as it does a petrol and diesel car. Yet you're going to spend 20 grand more or 10 grand more buying an electric car. The logic, and it just isn't there. You know, but the thing is anything in the world will look amazing if you look at it from just one perspective. But if you really look at it and you consider all the stuff, then you realise that, in this case, electric cars aren't what we thought that they are. At the moment, it just isn't a good decision from my perspective to do this unless you're doing it for tax benefits. The better air, the only benefit really is better air quality. But then what about the particulates coming off the tyres? We don't know about those things. Well, I don't know. I haven't done full research into that as to how that's going to impact people. Is it going to be bad for people with asthma and that kind of thing? You know, if you are into your cars as well, this is a big problem because you like the way you want a car that looks good and you want a car that sounds good. All electric cars just look a bit weird, to be honest, in some ways. And they're like rounded off and they're made to look like I don't know, I honestly don't know, like futuristic and stuff, and they just don't look that great. Some of them kind of getting there, but pretty much all of them, no. And of course sound isn't there unless you love spaceship sounds, or you have fart indicators, which is quite funny. I guess the fart indicator is quite funny. But hopefully in the future, these will make more sense. At the moment, it's just not a good decision to do it. Environmentally, it's not there. The infrastructure is not there. It costs more as well. And then you've got all this crap about batteries and, you know, what's going to happen if you want to keep the car. Obviously, the longer you keep the car, the better it is for the environment because you're not producing a new car. I think it is just more economical to even, like, if everyone just still drove 1960s cars and not a single car was made since then, the environment would probably be pretty much very, very good. Granted, yes, the air quality probably wouldn't be that bad. It wouldn't be great, sorry. But if you look at everything, really, if you look at it all, environmentally, the logic there is flawed. And cost, logic is flawed. The only benefits, better air quality, but then obviously you've got those particulates. But the other benefit in the UK is benefit in kind. And what this means is that if you're an employee of a company, this is where the UK loves to tax you so much, and your employee decides to give you a car, you have to pay tax on the benefit in kind, right? So, but the amount of tax that you pay is more if it's a less economical car and less if it's an economical car. And it's pretty much nothing if it's an electric car. So benefit in kind, and that's additional tax the person has to pay. So there's various things going on here. I think the simplest example I could, if you have like a use of an asset, then you do some calculations, and then that's added to the income figure, and then you're taxed on the whole amount, even though that's not cash in your pocket. The other benefit, tax benefit here, is if you have a company, because it's an electric car, because it's environmentally friendly, you can offset under capital allowances 100% of that in the first year, 100% off the cost. Whereas with other cars, you have to write down the value, so you deduct 18 or 6% every single year, and then so you basically had, say you bought it for 10k. I know it's not gonna be 10k, but say you bought it for 10k. You basically you offset a little bit, 18% of that, 1,800 in the first year. Then the next year, then you got, what is that, 8,200, and then you do 18% of that, and then the next year you write down the value basically, and then every year you take a little bit, and you offset that little bit every single time. Whereas with an electric car, you can offset the whole amount in the first year. So those are really the only benefits, to be honest with you. It's just the benefit, it's just the tax benefits. That's the only benefit, and better air quality. But again, I don't really think that that's much of a benefit. I think in some areas it probably does make a big difference, especially if all of the cars are like that. But then, do we have HGVs that are electric? Do we have lorries and trucks that are electric? Are our bin trucks even electric? Some of the buses are hybrids, but they make more noise than the other ones. It's just at the moment, the logic behind getting an electric car is completely flawed, unless you're doing it for tax purposes. And controversial opinion time is over now. I hope you enjoyed that, or at least gave you a different perspective. If you disagree with me, email me. If you agree with me, email me. If you want to say hi, email me. If you want to say bye, email me. My email is monsui@icloud.com. It's also in the show notes as well. I'll summarize some of the stuff in the show notes as well. And I will let you get on with your day. Thank you for listening. Have a good day, and I'll see you on the next episode.